As we begin this session, we're going to address the question of biblical manhood and male leadership in the home, but we're going to do it in the context of our church, what we do, why we do it, and why this issue is significant for us. First of all, there's the urgency of the need. It's an urgent need, first and foremost, because of cultural degeneration. Our culture has degenerated tremendously, and people simply do not understand what it means to be men, what it means to lead families, what it means to disciple our children. And as a result of that, there is a great need to prepare men to lead in this way. Secondly, ecclesiological confusion. And when I say ecclesiological confusion, what I'm referring to is this idea that has been addressed already a couple of times in our main sessions, and that is the idea of sort of jumbling jurisdictions. This idea of the church basically saying to families, you know, we're trained professionals, please don't try this at home. And it has created an environment wherein a family that is committed to family discipleship is actually outcast. It's interesting. We have people here at our church who were in leadership at their churches. Now, this has actually happened to somebody at our church. They're in a church, they're on staff at a church, paid staff at the church, okay? And as a member of paid staff, I'm gonna have to ask you not to record, please. Okay, thank you. And as members of paid staff, had their children begin to grasp this idea of family discipleship and began discipling their kids, began to take more of an interest and more of a hands-on approach to the discipleship of their children, and eventually participated less and less and less in the discipleship offerings for kids at their church. First, there were comments made. Then he was actually pulled into the office. And being pulled into the office, he was told, we have a problem because your children are not participating in the children's activities, the youth activities at the church. No, really they're not. Because, remember we said that we do that because parents are not doing what they're supposed to do. And we do that really as an outreach to kids who don't have Christian parents who are discipling them. You remember that? Well, actually, I am now doing what I'm supposed to do. So no, our kids are not participating in that because it's not designed for kids who are getting what my kids are getting at home. Yes, but you're setting a bad example by not bringing your children. Okay, but what we said was that we have this ministry because there are people who are not doing what they're supposed to. See, I am doing that. So it would mean that I am the example that we want people to follow because we want people to do what they're supposed to do and not use this ministry. No. We want everybody in this ministry. And eventually he was shown the door. Eventually he was shown the door. People who do not toe the line and participate in the children's activities and participate in the youth activities that we say only exist for and because of families who are not doing what they're supposed to do, those people are ostracized, okay? And so we have ecclesiological confusion. Thirdly, because of the continued growth at GFBC, this was an urgent need for us. So it was one thing when there was a smaller group of individuals. We started 4.5 years ago. I believe somebody said we had 7 families mainly when we started. And it was a lot easier to sort of help people and maintain sort of structure and instruction about what we were doing it, how we were doing it, why we were doing it. It was a lot easier to maintain that then than it has become. So now it becomes even more important that we'll become very purposeful about equipping family shepherds and the need for assimilation. Listen to this from Richard Baxter in his book, The Reformed Pastor. We must have a special eye upon families, to see that they are well ordered and the duties of each relation performed. The life of religion and the welfare and glory of both the church and the state depend much on family government and duty. If we suffer the neglect of this, we shall undo all. What are we likely to do ourselves to see the reforming of a congregation if all the work be cast on us alone, and masters of families neglect that necessary duty of their own by which they are bound to help us? If any good be begun by the ministry in any soul, a careless, prayerless, worldly family is likely to stifle it or very much hinder it. Whereas if you could but get the rulers of families to do their duty, to take up the work where you left it and help it on, what abundance of good might be done. I beseech you, therefore, if you desire the reformation and welfare of your people, do all you can to promote family religion. If you desire the reformation and welfare of your people, do all you can to promote family religion. As people come in, you know what, can we move, if you have space to the inside of you, would you move to the inside, please, as we have folks coming in? So what we've identified is four key areas that we concentrate on. Excuse me. Four key areas that we concentrate on in equipping family shepherds. Area number one, family evangelism and discipleship. Number two, marriage enrichment. Number three, child training. Number four, lifestyle evaluation. And in our monthly men's meeting, what we do is we break our year up into these 4 quarters. And each of these is an emphasis for 1 quarter of the year. We'll say more about that as we go along. 4 key tools. Number one, our ongoing teaching ministry of the church and our teaching in that monthly men's meeting. 2, our book of the month. Our book of the month. Each month we have a book that we'll have our men read in whatever area we're studying and emphasizing in that quarter. 3, mentoring. This idea of Titus 2 ministry, where we have older, mature men who help younger men with these issues, and where we have our elders to equip men personally in these areas. And the fourth tool is our church culture. Our church culture. And that one is one not to be overlooked. One of the things that makes a huge difference is being part of a church community and a church culture where family discipleship is the norm. One of the reasons that it thrives is because it is the norm. Otherwise, and often I'll get people who say, you know, hey man, we really like what you're doing. We really appreciate that. We really want to, do some of that. And we're thinking about maybe, starting a family integrated Sunday school, or we're thinking about maybe having one of our services that is a family integrated service, or, and I said, we affectionately refer to that at GFBC as a pre-split. Because this is not programmatic. It's philosophical. Let me say that again. This is not programmatic. It's philosophical. It's a different worldview. It's a different theology. It's a different value system. And so eventually the first thing you do is you create varsity and JV families in your church. The varsity families are the ones that go to the family integrated Sunday school class. The varsity families are the ones that go to the family integrated worship service. The varsity families are the ones who commit themselves to family discipleship, home education, and all these other sorts of things. You have varsity families and then you have JV families. And that causes tension. And eventually disunity. And we already know that you have a leadership that won't commit one way or the other. That's why you got both in the same place. If you can't say amen, you ought to say ouch. Okay? That causes division. And then what happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. What happens is people go, you know, that Voddie Baucham, he's really divisive. Really? Why? Because you tried to do this halfway in your church and it blew up on you? That makes me divisive? All right. Quarter number 1, family evangelism discipleship. Equipping men to win and disciple their families. Equipping men to win and disciple their families. Listen to this from George Whitefield. Every governor of a family ought to look upon himself as obliged to act in 3 capacities: as a prophet to instruct, as a priest to pray for and with, as a king to govern, direct, and provide for them. That's where we get the 4 P's from when we talk about priest, prophet, provider, and protector. Okay? These are those 4 areas of emphasis. The need here. First of all, we have a great need at GFBC for men to operate in these capacities in their homes because they're flying without a net at our church. There's no backstop. We do not have any structure or program to do it for them. Therefore, they must do it. That's why this is crucial for us. It's crucial that men learn this, understand this, and commit to this, because if they're not doing it, it's not getting done. We got no plan B, okay? Secondly, we expect fathers to disciple their wives and their children. Paul Washer said that so eloquently today in the close of his message. If you're going to champion these things, it's got to be followed up with a commitment to do the work. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's not going to get done. So we expect that. And here's the kicker. So here we are. We have no backstop and no program to do it for you, Dad. Secondly, we expect you to do it, Dad. Thirdly, you don't know come here from Sikkim, Dad. Because you've never done this before, you've never seen it done before, and you've never had anyone to tell you that it was doable or necessary. That's why we have to teach it. That's why we can't take it for granted. Okay? Because guys don't know. They haven't seen it, they don't know it, and in fact, they have been told repeatedly that they're incapable of it. Remember the church, last 30 years, we're trained professionals, please don't try this at home, okay? Meeting the need. Number 1, equipping men to lead in family worship. Can't emphasize this enough. Equipping men to lead in family worship. It's extremely important. It's a very simple thing, but incredibly powerful. Equipping men to get their families together on a daily basis to read together, pray together, and sing together. Okay? Not rocket science. Not rocket science. Talked to a guy in our church. This was a couple of years ago. He was new to the church, and he was just sort of scratching his head. He's like, man, this family worship thing is going to kill me. I'm like, really? What's the deal? And so he starts talking to me about all the stuff that he's doing, and how he's pulling out commentaries and all this sort of stuff. He gets ready, and, he's like preaching sermons. I'm like, dude, you're not going to, no, stop. Just read the Bible. Just pray. Just sing a song. This is not for you to sit down and recreate the Sunday morning worship service every day in your house, okay? This is not a complex gathering, okay? It's not. Does this mean that you're flippant about it? No, you're not flippant about it. But you don't turn it into a seminary course, okay? You read the Bible together, you pray together, you sing together, you make some comments on the scriptures that you read, okay? These are the things that you do. Now, maybe as your family grows and matures and they get older, you'll spend a lot more time on this sort of stuff, but it will be interactive as you have your older children who've been in the Word for a long time, interacting with you and digging into the text and making observations, all these sorts of things, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. This is not something we're talking about killing yourself over. Secondly, equipping men to lead in catechism. Equipping men to lead in catechism. Catechize your children, okay? Catechize your children. catechism, and I always have to explain this. Catechism is it's a pedagogical method, philosophy, teaching through a series of questions and answers. Now, it has most often been applied to religious teaching, but catechism as a method has been applied to all sorts of teaching. For example, there is a constitutional catechism. Okay? We have it in our home. I couldn't find it to bring it with me. There's a constitutional catechism. We used to teach the Constitution using catechism, a series of questions and answers. The most famous catechism is the Westminster Shorter Catechism. What is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Okay? That's the first question and answer of the Westminster Shorter Catechism. All right? What are we doing? We're teaching doctrine and theology through a series of questions and answers. Now, here's what we often get from people. And they'll say things like, I understand this, and I get this. That you want men to do this, you want men to lead, but here's the deal. And this is why we're often accused of having a way of doing church that is only appropriate for perfect families. And less than perfect families just have no place at our church. To which folks at GFBC go, really? Where's that family at our church? Okay? But we hear that all the time, well, when you have all these perfect, well-to-do families, then of course you can help you if you believe that that's what we got a collection of. We don't. We don't. Okay? But people assuming that, they say, oh, in your setting, that may work. But with us, we just don't have men who've ever seen that before or know anything about that or have any commitment to that. And so, they really need to be, taught and brought along themselves. So how would you, in a context where you don't have these perfect, intact families, have this kind of, okay, time out. First of all, you're wrong, but let's just assume that you're right. And we have all these perfect, intact families over here, but everywhere else in the world, they're messed up. Here's the deal. Your men, in order to disciple their families, they need to be discipled themselves, right? Yes. They probably need to be catechized themselves, right? Yes. Best way I know to catechize a man, tell him to catechize his family. Yes, but how can he catechize his family if he's not catechized himself? Okay, here's how you catechize your children. You get the catechism and you read the question. And then they tell you the answer. And you look to see if they read it back correctly. You don't have to let them know that you didn't know it before you read it. And so when we go through the children's catechism, I do not sit and learn and memorize the children's catechism. However, every day with our smaller children, we're going through a catechism for boys and girls. Who made you? God made me. What else did God make? God made all things. Why did God make you in all things? For His own glory. How can you glorify God? By loving Him and doing what He commands. Why are you to glorify God? Because He made me and takes care of me. Right? Who is God? God is a spirit, doesn't have a body like man. Where is God? God is everywhere. Can you see God? No, I cannot see God, but He always sees me. Does God know all things? Yes, nothing can be hidden from God. Can God do all things? Yes, God can do all His holy will. Where do you learn how to love and obey God? In the Bible alone. Who wrote the Bible? Holy men taught by the Holy Spirit. Who were our first parents? Adam and Eve. Of what were our first parents made? God made the body of Adam from the ground, formed Eve from the body of Adam. What did God give Adam and Eve besides bodies? He gave them souls that could never die. Have you a soul as well as a body? Yes, I have a soul that can never die. How do you know you have a soul? Because the Bible tells me so. In what condition did God make Adam and Eve? He made them holy and happy. Did they stay holy and happy? No, they sinned against God. What happened to Adam and Eve when they sinned? Instead of being holy and happy, they became sinful and miserable. What result did the sin of Adam have on all mankind? All mankind is born in a state of sin and misery. Now, do I sit down and work and put up cards and all this sort of stuff to memorize catechism for boys and girls? No. But I ask those questions every day. Every day. And there's some little kids out there going, you missed some of them. Yeah, I know. And I know which ones I missed. Are there more gods than one? There is only one. And how many persons does one God exist? 3 persons. Who are they? The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now all the kids are happy. Okay? So if you put a man, here's your 2 choices. 3 choices. 1, let's just keep doing what we're doing. We got men who are not capable of or committed to discipling their own families. Let's keep doing it for them so the families continue to be a wreck and we keep being disobedient to the scriptures. Option number 2, let's pull him out of his family for 6 months or however until we feel like he's ready and then put him into his family so that he can lead his family. Or 3, 2 birds, 1 stone. You need to be catechized. You need to catechize your family. Go. It's real simple. It's not rocket science. Not by any stretch of the imagination. This is not hard. 3, equipping men to lead in Christ-centered education. This is the most controversial aspect of who we are, what we do, what we teach as a church. The idea that we believe Christian parents have a biblical obligation to give their children a Christian education. That it's mandatory, that you have to do it. If you understand biblical discipleship, there is no alternative. Kindergarten through 12th grade, a child spends 14,000 instructional hours in school. You may not give those to the secular humanist state and say that you are adequately discipling your children. That dog won't hunt. And it's controversial. And you know, we shy away from controversy. 4thly, equipping men to lead in evangelism. They need to know the gospel. And they need to know how to share the gospel. Why? Because we want them to win their children and their neighbors. Amen? The tools. Well, there's some tools we use. 1, our weekly worship guide. And our weekly worship guide looks like this. Okay? You come and you get one of these. And it's interesting. You go to the weekly worship guide, and what did I just say that we had to do? Can y'all, what did I say we had to do? We're going to do our family worship, we're going to do our catechism. So we're going to do what? We're going to read the Bible together. What else we're going to do? We're going to pray together. What else we're going to do? We're going to sing together. What else we're going to do? We're going to catechize. So I've never done that before. And so I come to your church and I feel alienated because I never did that before. Really? Because right here in the worship guide and at the beginning of our service, what we do is we say, this is very important. You got this in your hand. You know why this is very important? Because right there in the middle, it's got our hymn of the month. We're going to sing that all month so that we can learn it together. Guess what? You can sing it in your home so that you can learn it together. It's right there. Yeah, but I don't know how to pray with my family. Really? Because right here, we have a shortened version of our prayergram, which goes out every week. Well, what do? Pray for one another. Because James 5:16 says, pray for one another. Pray for kings and those in authority. Why? Because 1 Timothy 2:2 says, pray for kings and those in authority. Pray for the Great Commission. Why? Because Matthew 9:37 and 38. Pray that the Lord of the harvest will send forth laborers into the harvest. So right here, 5 families from our church. Pick those 5 families, divide them up over the 5 days, Monday through Friday. That's what y'all pray. Kings and those in authority. We got 1 state leader, 1 local leader, and 1 national leader. Pray for those people this week. Pray that the Lord of the harvest will send forth laborers. Every week there's a different people group. And here's the people group. How many Christians in that people group? Do they have the scripture in their language? Are there churches being planted in there? Right there. There you go. Pray that. Yeah, but I don't know how to catechize my kids. Oh, that's great. We got catechism questions. And by the way, everything that's on this page, you will see done and participate in on Sunday morning in preparation for you going home and doing it on Monday. Well, what about reading the scripture? Well, we have our Old Testament reading and our New Testament reading. We usually read a whole chapter. Take that and break it down over the course of the week. Now you take this one little piece of paper, you've never done family worship before in your life, and you get everything you need to do it all week. Okay? It's designed as a tool, not rocket science. We're not trying to trick anybody. We're not trying to make this impossible. We're not trying to be holier than thou. We're not. Trying to make this simple and accessible. Truth and Grace memory books. Find those out there on the table. Truth and Grace memory books. Our program that goes out weekly. And our hospitality ministry. Once a month, have somebody from the church in your home. Once a month, have somebody from the community in your home. Why are we doing that? Well, because we share life together, not just a service. Amen. And when you have those people in your home, what are you going to do? You have them engage with you in family worship. Because they may not have seen it before. And it may be really helpful for them to sit with another family and watch it done. So you do that. Well, what about with your neighbors? We're going to do family worship when our neighbors come over? Yes, you are. What if they're not Christian? What better way to start a conversation about the gospel than, here's what we normally do after our mealtime. Won't you come join us? Amen. Second, marriage enrichment. What time is this one over? Okay. Marriage enrichment. Equipping men to lead in marriages. Listen to this quote from John Calvin. The more Satan has endeavored to dishonor marriage, the more should we vindicate it from all reproach and abuse, that it may receive its due reverence. Amen. The great need. Here's what's interesting. One of the things that we've learned is that in Family Integrated Church, you put a spotlight on marriage and family. So you got people, you can go to church, you can be a family that is a complete mess. You hate each other, you spend no time together, your family is upside down, just messed up. And you get in the car on Sunday, and he goes to the men's class, she goes to the women's class, the teens go to the youth group, and the little kids go to the children's church, and you never have to see each other. You can be absolutely committed to your men's ministry. She can be absolutely committed to her women's ministry. Your kids can be absolutely committed to Awana, to youth ministry, all that. You can be absolutely committed. And everybody who looks at you says, what a wonderful Christian family. But when you walk into your home together, it is World War III. Now you come to Family Integrated Church, and you can't hide from each other. Sometimes people come to our church, and it gets worse before it gets better. Amen. Sometimes people decide not to come to our church because they need to not be together because they don't want to address their sin. You got kids, you got parents, and if we're not doing our jobs with our children, and we'll get to that in a minute, but there's a spotlight on marriage and family. And we have to be aware of that. Such scrutiny inevitably reveals weaknesses in every marriage. And finally, if left unaddressed, these weaknesses could result in great tragedy. So we have to address the issue of marriage enrichment. We have to. Because again, here we go. Sir, we want you to wash your wife with the water of the word. Okay, really? Because we don't even like each other. Ma'am, we want you to submit to your husband. Really? Really? You want me to submit to him? You know what he looks at on his computer? You know how he veges out on the couch watching ESPN? So he just passes out in the evening? You know how uninvolved he is in our lives? And now you want me to submit to him while he washes me with the water of the word? I don't think so. Well, that has to be addressed. There's a lot of places where you don't have to address that at all. Everybody just go to your neutral corner. Everybody come here and get out of it what you want to get out of it. Go back and be completely dysfunctional. How do we meet the need? Number one, equipping men to lead in gospel-centered marriages. 2, equipping men to wash their wives with the water of the word. 3, equipping men to love their wives as Christ loved the church. 4, equipping them to live with their wives in an understanding manner. 5, equipping them to prepare their children for marriage. That one's very important. Because here's what we do. Our parents didn't do marriage well. In turn, we didn't do marriage well. They just sent us out and hoped we came back with a good one. Our goal with our children, we're not going to equip them. We're just going to send them out and hope they come back with a good one. In the words of that Texas theologian, Dr. Phil, how's that working for you? The answer is it's not. If we have broken families and broken marriages, doesn't it make sense that we need to pause for a moment and think about how we're going to prepare our children to do marriage in a way differently than the cultural norm, even in the church? Doesn't that make sense to anybody? Then how come it's never addressed? It's not. I ask youth ministers this question all the time, okay? The youth ministers that, we have this youth ministry because we got all these families and they're broken homes, and, we got these kids from these homes, and they got to come into the youth ministry because this is sort of all they're going to get. And if their parents are just not doing what they're supposed to do. So then here's my next question. So basically what you're saying is you've developed a ministry whose primary goal and main emphasis in teaching is to prepare these teenagers to be the kind of husbands and wives and mothers and fathers that will never need services like yours. Oh no, we don't talk to them about marriage and family and stuff. Really? So basically, you're going to perpetuate the very problem that led them to be in families that needed you in the first place. Well, we just, there's broken families out there, and there's... What tools do we use to meet this need? Well, one, our monthly men's meeting. In our monthly men's meeting, we have men read about marriage from a biblical, gospel-centered perspective. Our small group, God, Marriage, and Family small group that we have small groups that meet intermittently in homes, and we have one there. And then thirdly, biblical counseling. Biblical counseling. And by biblical counseling, we do not mean sending families to a counselor that says they believe the Bible when in actuality they're applying the quasi-science of psychology, which is antithetical to biblical Christianity, in an effort to get Christian people to overcome a problem that's a sin problem with a tool that doesn't address sin. That's not what we mean. We mean biblical counseling. Child training. John Wesley writes, but some will tell you all this is lost labor. A child need not be spanked at all. Instruction, persuasion, advice will be sufficient for any child without spanking, especially if gentle reproof be added, as occasion may require. I answer, there may be particular instances wherein this method may be successful, but you must not in any way lie this down as a universal rule, unless you suppose yourself wiser than Solomon, or, to speak more properly, wiser than God. For it is God himself who best knoweth his own creatures, that has told us expressly, he that spareth the rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. And upon this is grounded that plain commandment directed to all that fear God, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. Wesley might be my favorite Arminian. The great need. Here's why it's very important that we talk about this issue of child training, why we talk about formative and corrective discipline. Number one, our Sunday morning worship. We don't have a nursery. We don't have children's church. The kids are there in church, which means our parents have to be very serious about the discipleship, discipline, and training of their children. Otherwise, it'd be a wreck, okay? Two, our fellowship meal. Our fellowship meal. We're all there together at our fellowship meal. If we have parents who are not taking seriously their responsibility as parents, then our fellowship meal can turn into a wreck. Our home groups. We're in one another's homes. If we have parents that are not teaching their children how to behave properly in other people's homes and tearing up other people's stuff, that could be a problem. And with our hospitality. So all of these things make it very important that people come to grips with the reality that we cannot be lax in our parenting. Does that mean that we have perfect children or that we expect complete quiet in our services? Absolutely not. I go to churches and there's no babies in the room, and I preach a lot of places around the country, different parts of the world. It messes me up when there's no babies making baby noises. You know? It just messes me up. You know, Jesus didn't preach like that without babies making baby noises. When he wanted to illustrate a point to his disciples, he didn't say, "Go, please, to the nursery and bring me a child." No, he just grabbed a child, unless you become like one of these. And everybody look around at the ones by you, you know? He was able to do that. He didn't have to go find one somewhere. And it didn't have to be a special service where the children were there. They knew nothing else. They knew absolutely nothing else. Well, meeting the need, helping families understand their duty. Because families don't understand that this is a duty. We don't. In our culture today, we believe that parenting is really about helping children be well-adjusted and think well about themselves. You know, used to be, that's not the way we understood parenting. Used to be that parenting was about helping children conform to the family and to the society, not the other way around. And so there were phrases like, children are to be seen, not heard. We hear that today and we go, "Oh, how cruel." Really? Because I think it's inappropriate for little children to butt in on grown folk conversation. It's not appropriate. They need to learn their place. We don't think about that anymore. And so our children have no sense of decorum, no sense of discipline, no sense of respect whatsoever. And families absolutely think nothing of it. But you come to Family Integrated Church and all of a sudden you got all these people with all their kids who are obviously spending some significant time on child training, and immediately you go, "You know what? I should probably be doing something about this." And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And we have people who say, don't you feel like, you're going to alienate people? What are we going to alienate people? Well, there are people who will come into your church and their kids will be crawling all over stuff and making all kind of noise and doing this and doing that. And they'll come in your church and they'll see that for the most part, kids are being pretty well behaved and so on and so forth. And that'll make them feel bad. If their kids are acting like that, they ought to feel bad. Because they have not done what they've been commanded to do. Most churches just allow them to continue to act like the problem is not there. That's like a cancer doctor saying, "Hey, you know what? We're going to put a drape right here so that you don't see that growth." No, how about we go get that? Amen. Amen. Does this mean people are looked down upon? Nope, not at all. Absolutely not. One of the great things about coming to GFBC is, you come to GFBC and if you're there and, when down over spring, I'm going to be sitting there running mine out to take care of them just like you. Amen. Got 7 of them. Active parenting all the time. Not unusual for me, even on days that I'm preaching. Where I go, "You know what? Before Daddy comes back and take care of his sermon, come with me." Which is the second way we meet this need, which is modeling. Modeling. Okay? Modeling. There are no perfect kids. And every child is raised in a dysfunctional home. Cain and Abel were born to the first people on earth who were created by the hand of God in a pristine environment, and yet they grew up in a dysfunctional home. In fact, they grew up in the dysfunctional home, which is the reason that all other homes are dysfunctional. 3, equipping fathers to understand their role. We heard more about that today. Equipping fathers to understand their role. Because oftentimes you have fathers who just sort of watch their families like they're detached. So I call it the airport syndrome, you know? You ever been at the airport when there's a family who's traveling and mom is just hustling, doing everything that she can. Dad acts like he's on a business trip by himself. And you just want to walk over to him and say, you know what? Butch up, Sally. Take care of your job, you know? He's sitting there like those are her kids. None of that at GFBC. None of that. Fathers have to understand their duty. They have to understand their roles. And offering help and training to those in need. Offering help and training to those in need. The tools, our monthly men's meeting where we talk about this. Again, spend the whole quarter of the year talking about this. Small groups where we talk about issues of child training. Titus 2, coaching, mentoring, fellowship. And again, our hospitality ministry. Okay. We had I just never forget, we had a family over at our church, a young family over at our church. This is several years ago. And this is a family that was struggling at our church and struggling in the services and so on and so forth. And so they came over with their small children and they're there for dinner, and we're, you know, doing dinner, and their little boy, about 2 years old, just starts doing the fool. And the mom looks at my wife, Bridget, and she goes, see, right there, what do you do right there? To which my wife looks at me and then looks at her and goes, for real? I mean, is that rhetorical, or do you really want me to answer that question? And so Bridget responded, here's what I'd do right there. I'd spank his little behind right now. And then she looks at Bridget and she goes, and how would you do that? Which again, my wife goes, for real? And this young mother goes, yeah. So we taught a young mother how to spank her kids. By the time they left, they had different kids. It was an amazing thing. Lifestyle evaluation. It's the last one. The great need. Number one, the busyness of life makes this a great need. Life is busy. And we've not learned how to evaluate that. We think that all busy is good busy, and that's not the case. 2, the great need of our families. And 3, the responsibility to provide. How do we meet the need? Number 1, equipping fathers to understand their role. Most fathers don't understand their role. They believe that they are just providers and that everything else takes a backseat to being a provider. No, it's priest, prophet, provider, protector. Priest, prophet is first and foremost. If what you are currently doing to provide is interfering with your ability to be priest and prophet, then you need to find another way to provide. Equipping fathers to evaluate their use of money. Equipping fathers to evaluate their use of money. 3, equipping fathers to evaluate their use of entertainment. 4, creating space by minimizing our schedule. Creating space by minimizing our schedule. You look at most churches' schedule for the week, and they are communicating one thing clearly. You have no family life if you are an effective member of this church. We minimize our schedule. We don't put a lot of stuff on our calendar. We just don't. Why? Because of the things that we're asking people to do in their homes and the time that requires. Okay. And again, by modeling. By modeling. Okay. What are the tools that we use? Again, we have our monthly men's meeting where we teach these things very specifically. Again, we have our church calendar. that we keep really clear. We don't have a lot of things that we do. We do this every year, and we do our family conference in April, and then our church structure and philosophy. Those are tools we use. Also, counseling with men to help them understand and evaluate who they are, what they're doing, what's important, and when things need to change. Do we tell every guy, you got to live like this? No, we don't. But there's this concept. What's the immovable object? The immovable object is your commitment to disciple in your home. Your commitment to wash your wife with the water of the word. Your commitment to raise your children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. That's the immovable object. Unfortunately, for most guys, the immovable object is their career, an advancement in their career. Therefore, if this next advancement in my career means that I end up with a schedule that doesn't allow me to be home for mealtime at any time, don't do breakfast or dinner. It doesn't allow me to be there in a timely manner for us to have family worship. It doesn't allow me to be there to invest it all in the education of my children. It doesn't allow me to do all that stuff, but it allows me to have really nice stuff. How have we been taught to evaluate that? Go for the stuff. Because that's how you're measured as a man. No, in lifestyle evaluation, we try to help men think differently. Okay? Does this mean that stuff is always wrong? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But when it interferes with what is the main thing and what's supposed to be the immovable object, that's when it becomes a problem. Okay? So we spend a whole quarter of the year dealing with this issue of lifestyle evaluation. And sometimes it's the most difficult of all the things that we do. All right. Our time has drawn almost to an end. We got a few minutes for you to ask questions. Not youth groups create the dissension, but the idea that we're going to have both, that we're going to do the age-segregated ministry and the non-age segregated ministry in sort of provide a cafeteria style. That's what creates the dissension. The difference between a youth group and a Bible study, well, a youth group generally is a permanent standing entity. Generally. Bible study is usually something that's more temporary. A youth group is something that is selective in that it is people of a certain age and situation in life, where Bible study is about the Bible and what you're studying. And generally in a Bible study, people can come whether or not they belong to a particular age group or whatever. Yeah. No. The youth group is a problem for three reasons, okay? Number one, because it's not biblical. Number two, because it violates and is an absolute affront to the biblical model of family discipleship. It undermines it, okay? And number three, because it's been an abject failure at producing what it says it's designed to produce. So those are the three main problems with a youth ministry. They don't necessarily create dissension unless you talk about kind of loyalties that are created to create dissension in homes. But the dissension that I was talking about in the church is a church that tries to have both this sort of age-graded, structured mentality and offer something over here for people who are more of a non-age-graded mentality to try to have those two things work together. That's the dissension. Yeah, our men's group is open to all men. We believe manhood starts at 12. Last Wednesday of every month.
Can you describe how it goes, like what actually happens during the meeting?
Okay, during the meeting we gather together and we usually sing together, pray together. First we sing together. We have some praise reports and pray together. Well, after that we will have a time of instruction. And then in the time of instruction, we're either going over our particular book of the month or giving something supplemental to our particular book of the month, talking about whatever the issue is for that quarter. After that time of instruction, there'll be a time of interaction. Then we'll have prayer requests that are offered. And then guys will break up into smaller groups. And that's kind of a time of fellowship, accountability, prayer. And then after that, we have our practice where we learn the tenor and bass part of our hymn of the month that will start the following Sunday. Church discipline and the headship of the home. What do you explain? What do you mean? Yeah. Well, for us, let me just explain it in broadest terms. Church discipline, Matthew 18 governs how you do church discipline. Our structure has absolutely nothing to do with how you carry out Matthew 18. Our structure as a church and the authority structure of our church has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not we have a youth group. So we carry out Matthew 18 the same way. And it's not our elders. Matthew 18 starts with one believer and another. Our elders are only involved in a disciplinary process if it goes beyond that and the next level of witnesses and then comes, before the authority structures and figures in the church. So that has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not we have age-graded ministries. By teaching them the gospel, by teaching them biblical evangelism. So when we have that section on family evangelism and discipleship, again, there's 3 months that we spend on that. Sometimes there'll be a more heavy emphasis in that quarter on family worship and tools for that. Sometimes there'll be a more heavy emphasis on evangelism and what that is. Sometimes there'll be a more heavy emphasis on catechism and discipleship and what that is. During that time, by teaching them what the gospel is, how the gospel is to be communicated, what salvation is, what assurance of salvation entails, those are the ways that we equip them to understand that. How would I recommend that a person approach the leaders in their church if they wanted to share the principles with them? The first thing I would ask them to do is evaluate their motives. That's the first thing I would do, is ask them to evaluate their motives. The second thing that I would do is ask them to evaluate their relationships. The last thing you want to do is go up to a man that you have no relationship with and tell him, hey, what you're doing is wrong. These people are right. So here, why don't you suck on this for a while? And then, the third thing would be just be as wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And finally, you can't champion what you don't own. You can't champion what you don't own. One of the things that gives us a bad name, and one of the reasons that what we do oftentimes puts a bad taste in people's mouth around this country, is because people will hear a snippet of what we say and then run like a rabid dog to fight on our behalf for something that we don't even stand for. That's one of the reasons that people can't stand us, is because you got people who are mean and nasty, who don't love the church, who are unsubmissive to authority, who just find another reason not to submit to authority and put our name on it and say, see, they're right, you're wrong, you're not doing this, that's why I'm not going to listen to you. And so that becomes a huge problem. So we always just encourage people, evaluate your motives, check your attitude, check your attitude and understand what you're talking about. Because there's so many people who think that what GFBC is about is not having a youth group. That is just so far beyond the pale, It is absolutely not the be all to end all about who we are or what we do, And so just make sure you understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we're coming from, understand what the scriptures have to say about these things, and what your motivation would be in going to speak to a person in your churches and leadership, what your relationship with that person is, and what you hope to accomplish as you try to have that conversation. Those would be my words of advice. There's a lot of change around the country. And now what the trend is parental involvement in youth ministry. And so now what's happening is people are going, yeah, absolutely right. What we've been doing is an absolute mess. And so, we've got to do something. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to get a higher ratio of adults to teens in our youth ministry. So yeah, there's lots of change. Yeah. There's a lot of people who are trying to plant family integrated churches, But then you run into some of the same problems. There are people who have no idea what it means to be a family integrated church. And they go and gather together in these little huddles, and all they have in common is they don't like youth groups and they're scared of the world. And so they get together, a group of families, and the fathers are going to share leadership because they hate authority and they all want to be the individual authority of their own home. So what their little church ends up looking like is a bunch of guys who are all their own, kings and their own fiefdoms who share their verse for the day and then go home happy that they didn't have to go to a youth group. And then they call that a family integrated church, which is another reason that people look at us and go, this stuff is just not biblical. To which we respond, yeah, if that's what you're talking about, yeah, with you, So yeah, there's a lot of that happening because people just don't understand that family integration is a delivery mechanism for discipleship. The Great Commission says that we're to go and make disciples and that we're to teach them to obey all things that he's commanded us. Well, the main mechanism for doing that is that we do that in our homes. I mean, who else am I going to have that kind of time with that I can do that kind of discipleship with? And so as a leader in the church, what I want to do is equip people to take advantage of these small units that God has already created and given the kind of time that the church will never have with folks in order to be able to deliver that discipleship on that level. Now, when you understand it as a delivery mechanism and not as a sort of escape mechanism, it changes things tremendously. So there's a lot of movement, not all of it good. Most of it's not very good. But hey, the Lord knows who are his own. So we have single mothers in the congregation with teenage children. Who disciples who?
Children.
She does.
She's not a father. So.
No, she's not a father, but she's a single mother.
But is there a father figure somewhere?
Is there a father figure somewhere? Technically, no. That's one of the ravages of divorce. It's one of the consequences. So no, there's not a father figure somewhere. In another sense, there are father figures everywhere because everywhere you look, you see men who are being equipped to do these things that we're talking about. And if she got a teenage boy, he's coming to the monthly men's meeting and being coached up on how to do this. So how we deal with paying elders, our elders all receive a stipend from the church. And our stipend is designed around a number of purposes. We actually have a paper that we did on this, a position paper that we did on this. And our elders receive a stipend from the church, and the goal of that is that they would not have to incur themselves the cost of doing the ministry that we're asked to do, that we'd have to be able to buy things like books and gas and stuff like that. So it's not a stipend that's designed to be a guy's salary. All of our elders have other jobs that they do. But we also have provision in our position for the possibility of paying a guy to be set apart to do the particular work if we felt like we needed to do that. But we haven't been in a position where we felt like we needed to do that. So we don't have anybody who receives like a full salary from the church. Well, one of the things that we do, let me back up. It's a whole different deal that we talk about our shepherding ministry, our shepherding matrix. We divide our families up, and we have 6 deacons and we have 3 elders at Spring, okay? Which means we divide our families up among those deacons. The deacon is responsible for those physical needs, and then we divide those deacons and their families up among our elders. So I will have 2 deacons and their families that I'm responsible for. Once a month, I'm going to contact those people by phone, and I'm going to ask them about what's happening with family worship. I'm going to ask them about what's happening with their spiritual needs. I'm going to ask them about, things that perhaps we've been dealing with and working with them on. I'm going to try to contact them on a monthly basis. At least once a year, I'm going to make a visit to their home. And one of my goals in that visit is to sit with them and discern how they're doing in this area of family worship. If they need help and coaching and whatever. Now, hopefully if they do, I've heard about that in one of those 12 phone calls, that I've made throughout the year. But we actively shepherd the flock here. Yeah. What are some of the ways that married adults who don't have children are actively serving in our church? Here's what's interesting. That phrase, in and of itself, is a phrase that comes from our culture and not the scriptures. How are you actively serving in your church? What do you mean actively serving in the church? And I'm not busting on you. I'm just saying, I want us all to think about this, because that was my phrase too. Actively serving in your church. Why do we use that phrase? Well, because the church is supposed to be made up of programs, and people are supposed to go work in the programs because that's the way the programs survive, right? So how are you doing the programs? Well, we don't have those programs. And so hopefully you're engaged in a small group. Hopefully you're engaging in hospitality. We say once a month somebody from the neighborhood, once a month somebody from the church. If you've got more time, how about 2 or 3? Hopefully you're taking the gospel beyond your home to your neighborhood and to the place where you work. Hopefully when we gather together, there's stuff that all of us need to do in order for the service to happen. Hopefully you're being a part of those things. But what we don't have is this sort of machine that has to be fed volunteers, for the machine to sort of constantly run. No, just go be a Christian. Go be a Christian. I mean, that's what we ask of you. Just go be a Christian. It is liberating. Yeah. Yeah, but again, fall through what cracks? What does that mean? That means they're not engaging in hospitality. That means they're not engaging in small groups. That means that's what the problem is. Not that they don't have kids. They're not engaging, And again, they get a call once a month and a visit once a year, just like everybody else does. So, those cracks get smaller for people to fall through. But the answer to that is not more activity. The answer to that is engagement. Paul. Yeah, the question was about married adults who do not have children, and how do they serve in the church, get involved in the activity of the church? That was the question. All right, it's going to have to be the last one. We're a little overtime, but I'm going to take this one. Yeah, I was wondering when I was going to get that question. Staying in a church versus, taking off or whatever. Here's the question. Are you in a church where the gospel is being proclaimed faithfully? Are you in a church that is feeding your soul? Are you in a church that is giving you those tools that you need to be and to do what God has called and commanded you to be and to do? Are you in a church that is allowing you to do with your family what you see the scriptures teaching you to do with your family? If you're there, praise God. Yeah, but my church doesn't have this, doesn't have that. Our church doesn't have stuff, Our church doesn't have stuff. So the question is, do you have those main things, and are you being allowed and given the freedom to exercise these issues of family discipleship wherein you're commanded? If you do, then praise God, because you're in a unique situation, and the gospel is what you need to nourish and nurture your soul. Now, if I got to choose between a church that calls itself family integrated, but is not nourishing my soul with the gospel, and a church that has the age-graded ministries, but they get the gospel right, I'm going to the place that gets the gospel right.